Hello, my friends. It is Tuesday, January 7th, and I have 8 big stories for you today. The most interesting story is that a Ukrainian F-16 pilot hit a record number of missiles, 6, and I'll tell you how he did it in just a moment. But let's start here. It is Orthodox Christmas. It's January 7th, Orthodox Christmas. And so that meant that Lukashenko spent his time at church talking about how he was fomenting a migration crisis in Europe. He admitted that Belarus is the main transit route for migrants heading to Western Europe. Quote, there is a huge transit route through us to the West where migrants are trying to get to. He's accusing the EU of blaming it for the flow of refugees. Quote, we will not protect anyone from migrants, especially those who impose economic sanctions on us. Why should we protect them? Now, this is him speaking at church on Orthodox Christmas. And this hybrid war of sending migrants or creating a refugee crisis started in 2021 when the regime orchestrated a migration crisis on Poland's border. And Poland has worked hard to keep the border between Poland and Belarus very tight now. Okay, so here he is, Lukashenko, talking again at church on Christmas. Having a dictatorship like Belarus is better than Ukraine's democracy, he claims. Okay, well, I had to go see that story. So here's the actual article. Alexander Lukashenko made the statement as he visited a church in Lugansk, Minsk Oblast on Orthodox Christmas. He said, they want to get us involved in this little war. Why does Vladimir Zelenskyy act like that? Well, perhaps because the Russians invaded through your territory and it was a sucker punch? Maybe that had something to do with it. We used to be on good terms with him, and my small family was too. Why does he yap? What does he lack? He gets orders to do everything in order to get the country involved in the war. No, Zelensky's not trying to get Belarus involved in the war. That's not something that they're after. Quote, if we get involved in the war, it will be a hard situation. We may not be able to survive as a state. This is why I do everything with patience and persistence, as the Lord and the church teach us. Wow. Okay. We do our work. Time will restore everything. Time will evaluate everyone, but we have to endure. They may say that we have a dictatorship or something else. Listen, having a dictatorship like Belarus's is better than having a democracy like Ukraine's. We need to endure. We cannot ever sway, the Belarusian leader urged. Of course, he wants to hang on to whatever he has, but what's he talking about? Well, Zelenskyy kind of pantsed him in the interview with Lex Fridman by saying that, look, I talked to Lukashenko a couple of days afterwards, and Lukashenko said to me, well, let's look at the article. He said, like, what are you doing? Why are missiles coming from Belarus? And he, that is Lukashenko, said, it's not me. It was Russian President Vladimir Putin who launched missiles from my territory. These are his words. I have witnesses, said Zelenskyy. He apologized. He said, believe me, Volodya, it wasn't me. I told Putin not to. It was without me, Zelenskyy told Fridman while recalling the early days of the 2022 invasion. So he might have been getting Lukashenko in trouble with Putin by saying that. So that's why it's saying, has Zelenskyy finally struck out at Lukashenko? Because that's probably not something that Lukashenko wants to be made public. Okay, next. Let's look at the next big story. A video of Putin on Russian Orthodox Christmas appeared in the media. Kind of looks like he's uncomfortable, but, you know, maybe his shirt collar's itchy or something because he's just not looking all that happy to be there. But he is doing this. Putin orders generals in Ukraine to wear crosses engraved with his initials. Now that's just creepy. That's like Hitlerian, like in the United States, you take an oath to defend the Constitution. In Nazi Germany, they like little kids would be singing Adolf Hitler is our savior. He's the noblest man in the whole world. It's that kind of level of creepy. Russian President Vladimir Putin has requested that his initials be engraved on the chain links of crosses distributed to commanders of military units, according to Kremlin spokesperson Dmitry Peskov. Quote, I believe it will be an honor for our comrades to receive these symbols of faith blessed by the Patriarch of Moscow and all Rus during the Christmas Eve service. Patriarch Kirill and Putin request in his presence perform the blessing ritual for the crosses and small icons intended for Russian soldiers. Okay, so Russia has a long history of the Orthodox Church being in tandem with the state. Now, other places do too. There's a state church in England, but there's like in the United States, there's a separation between church and state, and that's so the state doesn't dominate the church and the church doesn't dominate the state, and they're separate entities, and they're not doing well this kind of thing. But this is it's just a little on the creepy side with the initials, let alone the blessing of the Orthodox patriarch for the generals in charge. Yeah, it's just okay. Now, authorities, now I saw this and I thought this was interesting. Brazil completes decoding of black boxes from the AZAL plane that was shot down by the Russian air defenses. I skipped the word allegedly intentionally because it was clearly shot down by those defenses. I mean, that's what happened. Authorities announced that the data extraction from the two flight recorders from the AZAL aircraft. Now, but these are black boxes. I feel so deceived. They're neither black nor box-like. They're red, and I don't even know how to make the shape. But apparently, they're getting the recording information, and it'll go to the Kazakhstan authorities who are leading the investigation. Meanwhile, the scale of the impact of the incident of the ships that shouldn't have been transporting this Russian kind of sludgy oil because the ships weren't rated for the Azov Sea, it's still affecting the coastline, and it's kind of an environmental disaster. Okay, North Korea successfully tests new intermediate range missile, the state says. Now, this isn't anything new. North Korea does this every couple of years, trying to get concessions from others. But this is a little different in that North Korea successfully tested this, but it looks like North Korea got this technology from Russia to produce this kind of missile that was doing this sort of thing. So it flew about 1,500 kilometers, or the speed of 12 times the speed of sound. It reached an altitude of almost 100 kilometers, after which it descended to a second peak of 42.5 kilometers and performed a maneuver to hit a target. So this kind of new technology came from the Russians. Okay, I saw this in the Kyiv Post and I wanted to address it. So the level of trust in Zelenskyy decreased by 12% during 2024, dropping to 52%. Okay, is that bad? Well, I mean, if you look at you would at first blush, you'd say, okay, so a decrease is bad. Yes, 52%, it's not anything lethal or anything for him as politically. If you look at most dictators think that, look, I got voted in with 98% of the population. That means it was a scam. It was fraudulent. If an American president beats his opponent like a 60-40, it's a blowout, right? So this isn't necessarily terrible. Let's look at Wikipedia here and look at American presidential highest and lowest approval rating. So here we have Biden. His highest was only 57%, like ever, and his lowest 36. Trump, highest was only 49% ever, and lowest was 34. Obama at 69 highest and 38 lowest. George W. Bush at 90% highest and 25 lowest. Now, the 90% highest is because of 9/11 and how he handled that. Bill Clinton at 73% highest and lowest at 37. George H.W. Bush at 89% highest, and that was right after the Gulf War, and 29% lowest. Reagan at 68 highest, 35 lowest. Carter at 75 and 28. Okay, so basically, all the American presidents had a low ebb and somewhere in about the 30s or so, generally speaking. So if we're looking at Zelenskyy at 52%, I don't think that's that much of a problem. And Zelensky's done a great job cleaning up corruption. 2019, a comedian became Ukraine's president. Everyone laughed when he promised to jail corrupt billionaires. Then he arrested the oligarch who made him famous. And now he's built Europe's most advanced anti-corruption system, or they're working at that, trying to go headlong the right direction. And look, in 9 years, Ukraine has improved from 142 as the most corrupt, like on the list, one place of 142, most corrupt nation, to 104. That's pretty significant. And you talk about Ukraine so corrupt. Russia is 141. So Ukraine is 104 and Russia is 141. The lower you are, the better. And we talk about how Ukraine's corrupt. Why are we talking about Russia being corrupt? Now, I did a video once upon a time about how the more Russian or closer you are to the Soviet orb, the more corrupt those countries are. The more Western those countries are, like the Baltic states and Poland, who were in the Warsaw Pact, the more Western they are, the less corrupt they are. And Russia is the center of that sphere. Okay, this is the big story that I wanted to talk about. F-16s won't be a game changer, says Sullivan. But then give Ukraine the tools in the proper quantities and they'll finish that job. So here's an article. Ukrainian F-16 pilot just came out today. Ukrainian F-16 pilot sets world record by shooting down 6 missiles in a single mission. Okay, here it is in United 24. Now, for the first time in history, an F-16 fighter jet destroyed 6 cruise missiles during a single mission, with 2 of them being shot down using aircraft cannon. That's not even shooting the missiles, that's shooting the guns at them. Wow. Okay, so the F-16 was armed with only 4 air-to-air missiles of both medium and short range. The pilot first launched 2 medium-range missiles at a distant target, successfully destroying them. Then he closed in to approximately 2 miles to engage the other pair of missiles with short-range weaponry. Then a new missile appeared on his radar, and he headed toward that. It was headed toward the Ukrainian capital, so he went that direction. The pilot reported his readiness to intercept, but there was a catch. His F-16 was out of missiles, leaving only its high-speed aircraft cannon as a weapon. He said, quote, "I knew hitting a missile traveling over 650 kilometers per hour would be difficult," he explained. But he said, "I had to spot it in the sky, match its altitude, and fire from a distance of no more than 500 meters, accounting for lead time. Getting any closer was risky. If the 450 kilogram warhead detonated, it could severely damage my aircraft or worse." But he said, quote, "I followed the exact protocols the instructors taught me. A few bursts from the cannon and an explosion, then another blast. Initially, I thought it was a secondary detonation, but post-mission analysis revealed there were 2 missiles flying in close formation." Wow. Now, this happened on December 13th during that massive missile and drone attack. So that was on December 13th. And this is what the guy looks like. Actually, I'm just being funny. This is what the guy looks like, and he deserves to get the publicity that he should get, the recognition. His name is Yuri Ignat, a Ukrainian pilot during this massive missile attack on December 13th. But that article just came out today, and good on him. Okay, let's shift gears again. Donald Trump's special envoy to Ukraine, Keith Kellogg, has postponed his trip to Kyiv and other European capitals until Trump's inauguration on January 20th. So will a deal be made on the first day, on January 20th? No. Now, again, that's Trump speaking hyperbolically. But he will be visiting Kyiv and Rome and Paris somewhere in January. So, okay, that's where we are. Now, along that same line, the Congress is working on this. This is Representative Steve Cohen, and he is the ranking member of Aviation Subcommittee, and he's on the Democrat side of the aisle. The evidence is clear that Russia is committing genocide, from mass killings and kidnapping of children to forced deportations, in Putin's own words, the denial of Ukraine's nationhood. My bipartisan resolution with Representative Joe Wilson, he's a Republican from South Carolina, would finally label their actions as such. If they can get that resolution forward, it's kind of hard to make a sweet deal with the country that has been accused by the Congress of the United States as engaging in genocide. So I hope they can get that through. Now, Congress certified Donald Trump's victory in the 2024 election yesterday. The results of the election across all 50 states and the District of Columbia were officially certified during a brief joint session of the House of Representatives and the Senate. The session was presided over by Kamala Harris, who was serving as the Senate president. Like, that's her role as the vice president, to preside over this. And remember, Mike Pence was doing that 4 years ago. Now, speaking of 4 years ago, I wasn't talking about Ukraine. I was doing this little podcast about leadership issues because that's the kind of stuff I teach. And nobody was really watching, but that was okay. And I was just doing this. But a couple days after January 6th, I put out this video. So what will happen next after the Capitol riot? And I said here in this post, so 4 years ago on January 6, 2021, I posted this on my original channel where I talked about leadership. Curious what you think. How did I do in explaining the future? Now, I looked a lot younger then, and people keep pointing that out to me. The last 4 years have been pretty hard. But look at this video next and tell me what you think. Was I on track or was I off track? These were my predictions about what would happen as a consequence of January 6th moving forward. All right, my friends, that's all that I have. Thank you for your time, the likes, the shares, and the subscribes. And thank you for being the kind of person that cares about Ukraine.